You got big dreams, big purpose, big visions on your mind.
Hello, my beautiful princesses. We are back for another video. All right, before we get started, let's subscribe if you have not. That way you can keep up with me, and that way you know when I post a video. So I think that'd be awesome if you do that. Also, go ahead and thumbs up this video since it's been a while. Just thumbs it up just because it's been a minute. Also, share if you like what has been shared today. Hopefully, this video helps someone through their process, or help someone realize that you're really not alone when you deal with this process of grieving. So we're just going to jump right in. First of all, I'm just going to cover the 5 steps if nobody ever heard of. Typically, there's 5 steps of grieving. Sorry, 5 stages of grieving. The first one is denial and isolation. The second one is anger. Third is bargaining. Fourth is depression. And 5 is acceptance. Now, everybody does not go through this process. I did not go through each step. Mine was a little quicker than that, I guess you could say. But we're just going to dive right in. For those who don't know, or if you don't really follow me on any other social media sites or whatever the case may be, my father passed away December 10th, 2015, which was last year. So we're a few days, it's been a few days after the 1-year anniversary of him dying. So, if you never lost a parent, especially a parent that you're close to, like me and my dad were close, that was like my best friend pretty much. I could tell him anything, he'll tell me the truth, whether I like it or not. Being that I was the only child, that also played a big role because, my parents were together for 30 plus years. Then they were pretty much all I had in regards to parenting department. So, it was a lot to take in. He had been sick, which we knew. But being Christians, you try to believe and have faith to the best of your ability. Okay, yeah, this is what they say medically, but okay, God, we're believing that you can do anything at any time, whenever you feel like it. But it was a trying time. Going to doctor's appointments with him and things like that. But he died on a Thursday. The Friday prior to that Thursday, in the previous week, I ended up having to call the ambulance to come pick him up because he didn't have enough strength for me and my husband to, take him, get to the car and take him to the hospital ourselves. And I just pretty much was like, okay, Dad, either you get up or I'm gonna have to call the ambulance. And a couple of hours had passed by, got a shower and stuff like that. And, his strength really wasn't there. So, ended up having to call the ambulance. They came and got him that night. It was like pouring down, raining. And we were living in Florida at that time. If you ever lived in Florida, the rain is crazy. So it was like 9:30, 10 o'clock at night, pouring down, raining. Me, my mom, and my husband went to the hospital, of course. Got there, we stayed a really long time. Me and my husband probably didn't get home till about 1 o'clock. They did not put him in a room till about 3, 4 o'clock that morning. By then he was really exhausted and really tired. We went home, got rest as much as possible. Got up the next day, went to the hospital, just to check on him and check on my mom. That way she could go home and shower and all the other stuff. And a doctor I used to work for, he is a general surgeon. I called him. I'm like, okay, hey, he already knew what the diagnosis was and all the other stuff. So, like, hey, my daddy's in the hospital. This is what. This is what they're saying. He happened to be out of town, so he was like, as soon as I get in town that Sunday, he was like, I'll stop by and see what I can do. I'm like, great. When you know people, that kind of helps put your mind at ease a little bit. So that Sunday, got a phone call. Me and my husband sat down after church and pretty much listened to what the doctor had to say. Their decision was, the best bet is to put him in hospice. So, given that that's your parent or any loved one or any friend or whatever the degree of your relationship might be, putting someone in hospice, people automatically are like, oh my God, they're gonna die just out the gate. That's the first thing that comes to your mind as a human. Oh my God, they're gonna die. And I felt like my mom really, she didn't want to do that. But when the doctor was done, I said to her, I said, you know what? He wants to go home. He wants to be comfortable, which is totally understandable. Being in the hospital, if you've ever been in the hospital overnight, whatever, you're not really comfortable. You got people coming in and they want to do your blood pressure and they want to do your vitals, and they want to poke and prod and whatever the case may be, depending on why you're in there. So, him wanting to be comfortable, I'm like, hey, let's put him in hospice. He can go home. He can be as comfortable as he wants to be. They can come in, do what they need to do. And it's a good situation all around for everyone. And that she understood. So we ended up agreeing to that. So that Monday, my husband and I got off work early and we went to meet with I guess like the hospice caseworker or whatever they may call themselves, the people that initially give you all the overall information, if you have any questions and all that other stuff, and they pretty much organize and set up everything. So happened in this whole process, in this whole process of this going on, my dad, he had people up under him, pastors up under him, which my dad was a bishop, which for those who don't really know what that is, he pretty much was a pastor. So having people up under him, a lot of people had decided, let me come in town, let me, personally come check on him, which was fine. People that know my dad, really know my dad, know he's a private person. So us telling 50,000 people his personal business was not something that we did. During the whole process prior to him going in the hospital, whoever knew because that was his decision for them to know. At no point in time did me, my mom, or my husband, violate that level of privacy in that regard, because, I'm very transparent. He was very transparent. But there's certain things, especially when you, and regardless of whatever the situation is, you want to share it with people that are going to be in your corner, have your back, that's going to be praying for you. You don't want people out there that's doubting and, they're in unbelief that, okay, yeah, maybe you can be healed from this, or whatever the case may be, whatever it is you might be going through. So you always want people in your circle that you feel are going to have your back in regards to whatever situation. So, with that Monday, the Lord must have been been working it out for me. He must have been looking out, because my husband I worked about 10 minutes away from the hospital. My husband worked about 30. He got there before I did. Our appointment, we were supposed to meet there at 2:00. He got there before I did. He calls me. I'm like, oh, I'm on my way. I'm around the corner. Actually, I was on like turning on the same street as the hospital. And he was like, just letting you know, these two particular people, their husband and wife, they're here. I'm like, okay. But they brought an entourage of people with them. I'm like, okay. So you know my daddy, and you've known him for years. You felt the need, knowing that he is a private person. You're up under him. You bought people that were up under you. So you bought them to the hospital for what? That was not the time nor did you call my mother, nor did you call me to say, hey, is it okay if we bring 5 or 6 people with us that shouldn't have known my dad's business at that time, shouldn't have known any of this? At no point in time did it cross their minds, I'm assuming, to contact the people who are involved in the situation to say, hey, can I... So sorry about that. My camera, I thought it was going to last longer than it did. It did not. So hopefully I'm picking up where I left off. But nonetheless, yeah, they didn't call or say, hey, is this okay? Nothing. Which, you know, when you're dealing with a sick loved one, or, you know, anybody sick, period, you expect people to be a little considerate, but it doesn't always happen. So it when my husband called me and shared that, I was just like, okay. I was beyond upset. I was beyond pissed off. Because you you shouldn't expect, but you should, people to be a little more considerate during that time. And to me, that was a level of selfishness, lack of compassion, lack of empathy, lack of everything summed up in one. And when I tell you I was beyond pissed off, I had not been that pissed off in a long time, to the point where the old Brittany was ready to slip out and knock somebody's head clean off their body. Because I was just like, who does that? When I tell you, thank God for my husband, because I vented every word that probably was, well, it probably wasn't, but it was not the best words to be using at that point in time. Let's just say I had to repent later on that day, just in case, you know, the Lord decided to come back and, you know, get us. So I had to make sure I had myself together. But in the heat of the moment, I was so pissed off and hurt, and dealing with the fact that, okay, I'm headed to this place to talk to these people about putting my dad on hospice. So he sets me up. Come to find out, I'm on the phone with my cousin after I hang up with him. She trying to get me to calm down. I push the button for the elevator, and my mom and the lady from church are getting off the elevator. Oh, where you going? I'm like, don't ask me no dumb question. You know where I'm going. You know why I'm here. I'm going to see my daddy. Oh, well, you know, they like grabbed me, like snatched me up. Like, the lady from church had snatched me up like under my armpit. She didn't really snatch me up, but like she grabbed my arm and was like, no, let's step outside. And I was like, no ma'am, I'm already pissed off and you putting your hands on me. Love her to death. Ain't got, well, love her to life. But it was like, no, let's step outside, mom. I'm like, nah. My cousin in my ear on the phone, you gotta calm down, you gotta calm down. So we go outside, I vent my frustration. I'm like, who in the world does that? And the census was, yes, Brittany, you are right, but you can't go show your behind. I'm like, that's where me and Christianity sometimes have our what's the word? We butt heads sometimes. And there has been a lot of situations where I'm glad I didn't. After the fact, you know, hindsight is 20/20. But at some point in time, me personally, this ain't biblical. Ain't no God probably in this, nowhere to be found. But at some point in time, some people, you got to show your behind to them, especially if they keep doing the same foolishness over and over again, and they clearly not getting the lesson or understanding, especially if you go to them and express to them, you know, hey, this is what it is. But nevertheless, we got outside. I explained it. They were like, you know, you're right, but you can't do this. You know, your daddy wouldn't do this. He wouldn't like it. He would have forgave me, but he wouldn't have liked it. So we finally get upstairs, get off the elevator. The entourage of people are sitting on my right. As I get off the elevator, I'm like, had no words. Kept going. Bent in the corner. The wife standing outside the room crying. Ain't had a lick of sympathy. Walked past it like I didn't see her. Went in the room. It was some other people there that I already knew were there that were in town. Spoke to every last one of them except him. He was in the room. So they finally come out after we meet, and they go back around the corner by the elevator with their people that they brought with them. And I was like, you good? I'm like, because we don't need all the crying. We need people that's going to be sitting here praying and tough and, you know, be able to hold it together for, I didn't even say me, for my mama. You ain't got time for that. You want to come up here and cry? And then the thing that really got me, my children did not know. We just said, okay, you know, pop you in the hospital. We're going to go into any detail. You let your child go in there and see him in the condition he was in, and you still didn't ask? Where we do that at? Who does that? Who invades somebody's privacy to that extent? Number one, your child freaks out and leaves out the room. And you ain't biological family. You didn't. Let me get myself together, because I have forgiven. But Lord knows it's hard to forget. Jesus, working on it, struggling, but working on it. So after I get myself together, pull them to the side, I expressed about the number of people. That was the Monday, thinking they understand. So Tuesday, we get everything set up. They get my dad home. You know, we had already had they came out and did the hospital bed and got the room set up or whatever. I'm thinking, after I didn't talk to them about this entourage of people that they bought with them for absolutely no reason, I thought they had got the revelation, but clearly they didn't, because they came back the next day and bought the people to my parents' house and then had the people sitting outside, which made me feel bad after they came in the house and was like, oh yeah, they're outside. Why are they outside? Why, again, bad enough you brought them to the hospital, but then you bring them to my mom and daddy house? Who does that? Again, violating somebody's right to privacy. I don't care who it is. You're not biological family. Even if you were biological family, if you bring in people that were not biological family, you should have had enough common sense to call and ask, was it okay? Period. But didn't. So mind you, now all this is going on, trying to get a hold of what's transpiring. Then you got people with their own personal agendas and their own crap, for lack of a better term. So I said, you can bring them in, because my daddy wouldn't leave the people outside. I said, but they make any noise, they get too loud, they gonna have to go back outside. So, after everybody left, people were in and out, and just people just being there. The people that came from out of town just being there, which was fine. It wasn't an issue. He brought me and my mom in the room, and he was like, sit down. And he said to us, y'all are doing a good job. And I'm like, okay, thanks. He's like, y'all keep fighting. And I'm like, okay, yeah, you too. And my mom said, you're still fighting too, right? And he said, yeah. But it wasn't, looking back on it, it wasn't as confident as it could have been. So this was Tuesday evening. So Wednesday, we met with hospice. They did their evaluation, gave us medications to help him be comfortable. And, you know, let me backtrack one day. I'm sorry. On that Tuesday before we left the hospital, the hospice guy was talking to me in the hall, and a doctor I used to work with came up to me, and I didn't work for him. He had patients. I'm a dialysis technician, so where I used to work, he would come and see his patients, kidney patients. Dialysis is for hemodialysis is for people that have kidney failure. So, and that's not what the illness was with my dad, but the whole process affected his kidney. So he came to me in the hall while I was talking to the hospice guy and said, just very random. And it literally caught me off guard. He was like, "Oh, I didn't know this was your dad. You know, he is gonna die." And literally, that's what it was. My question was, well, you know, can the kidney start back functioning and all this other stuff? And he's like, well, at this point in time, pretty much no. And I guess he felt that he could just hit me with the, your dad's gonna die, because of me working in the healthcare industry. And understanding that they have to use certain, you know, dead or die, or they have to be direct as professionals, because a lot of people, I guess in the past, have misunderstood, misconstrued when somebody, say a nurse or a doctor, says to someone, your loved one has passed away or they have moved on. It gets, I guess, mentally it gets misunderstood by people. So they use the word dead or died or death, whatever, you know, however they're phrasing it. So that caught me off guard. So Wednesday, after the hospice nurse come in and we sit and talk and, you know, get everything straight and all this other stuff, they leave, and later on the evening he has some more visitors, and his stomach had started filling back up, his abdomen started filling back up with fluid. So I called the nurse that evening and I said, can we set something up where they can drain the fluid? Because when you have fluid in your abdomen, it pushes against your lungs, and it's a lot of the times it's hard to breathe and hard to talk. So, you know, just wanting him to be as comfortable as possible. The doctor okayed it, and the appointment was set for the next morning, Thursday morning. So, you know, everything started winding down, you know, making sure my mom was eating and stuff like that, and, you know, making sure she was good, and, you know, trying to keep face for the kids and be optimistic and fall apart in your own time and keep it together for everybody. And that Thursday morning, my mom called me, and it so happened my husband was off work for like 3 days. I think he was off like that Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, or something like that, however it worked out. Yeah, I think it was that Wednesday, Thursday, Friday he was off for whatever reason. And thank God it worked out that way, because if I had to do this by myself, I would have lost my mind. So we do all of that. Babe, oh my God, so sorry. I got interrupted. My husband came home early. Then the dog came in here and decided she wanted to sit over there on the floor. But yeah, nonetheless, that Thursday morning, the appointment was set up for him to go that Thursday morning. I think about 8. No, they were picking him up at 8 by ambulance, and then I think the appointment was like 9 or 9:30 or something to that effect. So my mom happened to call us in like 6:05 that Thursday morning. She was like, you know, your dad sleep down in the bed. Can you and Stephen come, which is my husband, can you all come, you know, help me slide him up in the bed, or y'all slide him up in the bed? Not a problem. Get down there. And if you have never seen or experience someone in the process of transitioning, and I guess that's the word, transitioning to death, it is an experience I would say you'll never forget. It is yeah, it's an experience you'll never forget. You know, we slid him up in the bed and you can tell he wasn't really there. So me never seeing the transition process, I'm like, Dad, Dad. And I tapped him and he looked, he stopped, and he looked at me. And that was the last time. That was the last time he looked at me. And then he, you know, went back and he was making like little noises, you know, to it seemed like he was very uncomfortable. You know, even when we slid him up in the bed, you know, he was like, ugh, like it was hurting. So, you know, I called the nurse, or I called the facility, you know, to see what I needed to do. You know, they told, and he had seemed to be very anxious, and he was saying stuff, and then it was being the person that he was. Even the stuff that he was saying, it was still biblical. As he was transitioning, as he was dying, it was still biblical. Some stuff he was saying while my mom was there, biblical reference. One thing he said when my husband was there with him, because I went home, got a shower, took the kids to school, still keeping face. My mom took a shower, and Stephen stayed there with him, you know, holding his hand and stuff like that. And he was making reference to the number 5, and he kept saying 5 and 2, which equals 7, which is the number of completion. So, you know, even in that, and he was saying, you know, when I was there, he was saying, you know, get the keys, I'm ready to go. And that's when I knew. So I started making calls. You know, I walked out the room trying to keep face for my mom. Walk out the room, I'm calling like, hey, calling certain people, I need y'all to pray. This is not looking good. So, you know, I would walk in and out the room, fall apart for 2 seconds, walk back in. And we were playing his favorite song before he died was, it's called Intentional by Travis Green. I think that's who it's by, Travis Green. So, you know, trying to keep faith, still, you know, trying to be strong for my mama and still have faith that, you know, things could change. But I knew it wasn't good, but I was still in denial. So my husband finally went home, showered, came back, and we got everything situated. They came and got him, so we followed the ambulance, got to the facility, we parked, and they pulled up to the front, and we were sitting there, you know, just waiting on them to get out, which it took a few minutes, and we were just talking, nothing, you know, didn't think anything. So when they took him out of the back of the ambulance, they, you know, went in, they were moving a little fast, you know, thinking about it now, they were walking pretty fast. And when he had to go to the second floor, so they put him on the elevator, and they put him on not facing the door, but facing the wall. So they were closing the door when we were like maybe 20 feet away, if that, 10 feet away, if that. And I'm like, okay. in my mind, I'm like, y'all could have held the elevator. Thanks, I appreciate it. So then we ended up catching the next one. By the time we got up there, they were bending the corner. One of the EMTs said something to the nurse, bent the corner, and they took him in the room. So the nurse was like, hey, you know, we have a waiting area over here, a family waiting room. So me and my husband go in there. My mom stayed in the hall, and the waiting room was literally across the hall from the room he was in. And she was like, you know, just give him a few minutes. They're gonna take him from the stretcher and put him in the bed and make sure he's comfortable and situated. No problem. We in the family, me and my husband in the family waiting room. Like, oh, they got coffee, and you know, they got a couple of snacks or whatever for you, TV, etc. So we're sitting there, and we're really standing looking around, and my mom was in the hall, and the nurse comes back out of the room, and she's shaking her head. And in my mind, being in the medical field, I understand sometimes, depending on the situation, if they don't feel you're strong enough to do the procedure or whatever, you know, they could just say, no, we're not able to do the procedure. Patient's not strong enough, or whatever the case may be. That's what I thought she was shaking her head for. She shook her head and said, he died. And I'm standing there and I'm like, he died? I'm like, no, no. We're like not even 30 minutes from the house. Like, no. And that was my denial process. I was just like, no. And literally after that, and my mom got on me. You know, you say when your spouse just died and your mama, she's still getting on you for cussing. I'm sitting there, and all I could say was, what the hell? That's all I kept saying. What the hell? And my husband grabbed me, and I'm like falling apart. I literally fell apart. Because I'm like, 1 minute you're here, and I'm believing and trusting God, and the next minute you're gone. So another nurse came in, and she was like, you have to calm down, sit down, you gotta calm down. You know, drink this water. And literally, I have never shook so hard. My hands were shaking so bad. And while I'm saying, what the hell, here come my mama. Stop cussing, stop cussing. I'm like, really? Right now? Like, I can't even get past right now? So, you know, she makes a phone call to one of my aunts. And then I guess whoever she called thereafter, I just knew that she called one of my aunts first. And then I called some people, and then my hands were shaking so bad. I think I called, that's the dog. I think I called 2 people, and my hands were shaking so bad. My husband ended up taking the phone and calling everybody else. And the doctor that I used to work for, I think he was probably like the 4th or 5th person that my husband called. And he fell apart. And crying. And most of the people that came in town were men. And having to call people and tell people, and there were a few people that I said, you know what, let me call them directly versus, because I did ask my mom, I said, you know, can I post this on Facebook? Is it okay? She said, yeah. But there were some people I felt like, okay, let me call so they'll hear it from, you know, one of us, what happened. So that transpired, and then they started coming. And when I tell you, you know, it was hard to see. It was hard to see men cry. sorry for all the crying. It was hard to see men cry. And when they finally got there, it had maybe been hour and a half. Some other people had came. And it was hard. I had, finally got myself together. And by the time it hit and my phone is dinging off the hook. Calls are coming in. I'm calling people. Now my brain is in, okay, what's next? What do we got to do next? Okay. The nurse said we got to, decide what funeral home. Trying to do that, trying to make decisions. Okay, we're going to do a memorial here in Florida, and then we're going to go to South Carolina, where we're originally from, and we're going to have a service there, and blah, 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 and this is how we're going to work it out, and yada, yada, yada. So my brain started working, but I did have time eventually. And I went in the room, and I held his hand, and I found myself apologizing for nothing. I didn't really, I guess to a certain extent I was apologizing because I didn't ask more questions. I didn't have more conversation, which, that happens. When you have a loved one that dies, you wish you had more to say, or you wish you had more conversation, or talked about this, or got this off your chest. And, it wasn't anything of, I wish I got this off my chest. It was more so I wish we had more conversation. I wish I beat myself up for so long because it was like, I felt like I was trying to maintain such a high level of faith, which is fine. But I personally felt like I was trying to maintain such a high level of faith and not doubt and just believe that there was not enough reality for me where it set in that this is what this is looking like. Even when he sat us down that Tuesday and said, hey, y'all keep fighting, you did good. Looking back, I'm like, okay, that was the last real conversation we had. So that was hard for me. So during that process, I guess, being in denial, that was my first step. And then once I went in the room and sat there and looked at him and, held his hand, that I accepted it then. And the reason I felt that it was so easy for me, and kind of my mom to a certain extent, it was more so easy for us to deal with this over that period of time. Because honestly, I did not start, he died December 10th, 2015. I did not start actually grieving, like really fall apart, boohoo crying, until August of this year. 8 months had passed, and I found myself even, I had to talk to a couple of people that day to calm them down. And I found myself, I'm sorry, it's okay. And for days I was saying to people, I'm sorry, it's okay. I have no idea why I was saying that. I guess, to reassure people, it's going to be okay. We're all going to be okay. It's tough. It sucks. We should be still here, but we're going to be okay. And I guess that's where that was coming from. And I'm sorry if this video is like forever long. I do apologize. But dealing with all that, the denial process, the acceptance, and then fully grieving months later, it was definitely a process, because one of the things I know about me, a lot of the times it would bother me certain days, and having children and a spouse and, dealing with people, I tend to have come off, you would get more of anger and upset out of me versus let me just sit here and cry and get it out of my system. And really didn't have too much time to sit back and grieve, because after he died, you know, helping my mom with certain things that, you know, my dad would only take care of, and, you know, making sure she's eating and making sure her stuff is paid for, making sure the kids at home are okay, making sure, you know, I'm cooking and cleaning and making sure our bills are paid. And my mom ended up moving to a whole nother state. I ended up moving to a whole nother state. And this is in the matter of from January to, my mom moved, I think April. And then I moved May. And we moved to 2 different states, even though, you know, we're like 3 hours away from each other. Moving to a different state, adjusting, having children, you know, registering people for school, making sure my mom is still good, getting accustomed to stuff, and, you know, all this stuff that has transpired. And then finally, I'm like, I don't have to keep face for anybody. I can breathe now. I can be me, and I don't have to tell anybody, it's okay. It's going to be okay. We're going to be all right. And yeah, just being able to breathe. That's honestly how I felt like I didn't have to be tough for anybody. So, those are the only, honestly, two steps. You know, I can't say I went through all 5 steps, but, you know, denial and acceptance. And what I was going to say was it was easier for us. And I guess it took so long for me to get there because my dad used to go out of town a lot. So a lot of the times it didn't even feel like he was dead. It just felt like he was out of town and he'll be back. Because he would go preach. He could preach 2 or 3 weeks, be out of town, and it was nothing. And that was like his thing all my life. So that's what I was accustomed to. So to a certain extent, it made it easier. But then it also lengthened the process of grieving. And one thing that I found that I had to stop doing, which I found out in October, I had to catch myself. And I understand why he would always teach, you know, his thing was don't go visit grave sites of your loved ones. And especially when you have a loved one and you go out there, all these feelings, all this hurt, those emotions of when that person died, those thoughts, all that stuff tends to flare back up. And I noticed I went and every time I would go to town, I would go to the cemetery. And not just really, I'm not out there talking to him because I know he's not there, but it was just, went out there to be nosy, I guess. You know, that was the last place I technically saw his body. But I found that I can't do that anymore because it would put me back in those same exact feelings. And this last time, when I tell you I struggled, I mean, it was 3 or 4 days and I could not keep it together. I'm talking about just cry. And I said, I had to call my mom one night and I was like, I need you to pray because I was struggling so bad. And after she prayed, and you know, one thing I know from experience now, experiencing this, when you're grieving, I had to make myself busy. I can't, if I have days where he's coming across my mind, I have to get out of the house. I can't sit here because if I sit here and I think about it and I wallow in it, it's not going to be beneficial. And that's one thing from experience that I learned. If you're sitting there and this person or persons, whatever the situation may be, you don't want to stay in that mode of grief, that mode of sadness, because the thing that will happen, it can turn into depression. It can turn into other things, and you don't want that to happen. And I have to, you know, This past weekend, being it was the 1 year anniversary, people were texting and checking on me and posting things on Facebook about them. And for several hours, I just couldn't go on Facebook. I'm up 2 o'clock in the morning, pillows soaking wet. I'm like, nope, can't do this to myself, not today. Luckily, we had something at church, so that that in itself kept me busy, kept my mind busy. So just from my experience of losing a parent, losing a loved one, you can't stay there. When you're sad, you can't wallow in that sadness, because you don't want it to lead to other things. And then especially if you have a family, sometimes we tend to take things out on our kids or our spouse or whatever, especially if you're not really a verbal person or whatever the case may be. So you want to be mindful of that. But I hope this helped. It helped me. I finally got it out of my system. And forgive. That was a process for me to make sure I forgave people during that situation. Because a lot of times people think they're doing stuff right and they're really not. And they're not very considerate of your feelings or what's really going on at that point in time. So forgiving and accepting and not staying in those feelings, not staying where it could lead to depression, which could be a whole nother issue outside of grief. So I hope this encouraged somebody. I do apologize for all the crying. And I love you all. Thank you for watching. Please thumbs up this video. I mean, even though it's a little sad, thumbs it up. Share with somebody that you think it might help. And I will see you in the next one. Peace. Love you. Bye.